The discovery. The night was silent, and the ruins stood like broken teeth against the dark sky. The explorer moved carefully, his boots crunching on the dry earth. He was not a soldier, not a hero, only a seeker of forgotten things. But that night, something was waiting for him, something older than all the wars of man. He carried only a lantern and a small pack. The light flickered across the stones, revealing marks carved long ago. Walls cracked, ceilings collapsed, yet the air felt alive. He felt as if the ruins were breathing, watching, holding secrets too heavy for time to erase. In the center of the chamber stood a block of stone, half buried, half broken, yet strange in its presence. And from it, a faint glow shimmered like a heartbeat. The explorer froze, his eyes widening, his breath slowing. Something was calling him, though no voice spoke. He stepped closer, his hand brushing dirt from the surface. There was an ancient sword buried deep into the stone. It looked impossible, for no ordinary weapon should shine after centuries. Its blade gleamed faint silver, though untouched by the sun. The hilt was wrapped in leather, so dark it seemed burnt. The explorer's chest tightened. He knew the legends of cursed weapons, of relics that destroyed those who touched them. But curiosity was stronger than fear. He reached out, his fingers trembling. The sword hummed softly, as though it had been waiting for him. With a firm pull, he drew it free. Dust fell from the stone, echoing through the empty chamber. The blade was light, far lighter than he expected, almost alive in his hand, as if it had chosen him. Then he saw it, inscriptions etched deep along the metal, lines and symbols glowing faint blue. He traced them with his eyes, trying to understand. Most of it was unreadable, strange letters older than any known tongue. But one line stood clear, sharp, undeniable. Humanity shall never rest. Its war is eternal. His hand shook, and he almost dropped the blade. The words burned in his mind, as if spoken by 1,000 voices. He stepped back, but the sword remained warm in his grip. It would not let him go. The weight of those words filled the room. The silence grew heavier, as if the air itself listened. A sudden wind rushed through the chamber, though there were no open doors. The lantern flickered violently. He heard whispers, not from outside, but inside his head. Visions flashed before his eyes. Cities burning, skies torn apart, soldiers screaming, and endless battles stretching into the stars. He gasped and dropped to his knees. The images faded, but the fear remained. The sword lay across his lap, glowing faintly like a living heart. The inscription pulsed, reminding him of what he had seen. It was not just a relic, not just a weapon. It was a warning. The explorer wanted to leave, to throw the sword back into the stone, but his body refused. Something inside him whispered that the choice was already made. By touching the blade, he had awakened it. By reading the words, he had tied himself to its fate. He rose slowly, sword still in hand. The ruins around him felt different now. The air carried a strange weight, as if the walls themselves knew his secret. He turned to leave, but before he stepped out, he looked back one last time. The chamber seemed darker, emptier, as if the sword had stolen its last secret. Outside, the night was colder, the wind sharper, but the glow of the blade did not fade. He wrapped it in cloth, yet still the warmth pressed through. Every step back to his camp echoed with questions. Why was it waiting here? Why him? And what did those words truly mean? Humanity's eternal war. He did not know yet, but the whisper in his head did not stop. And in the distance, under the stars, shadows stirred. Something had awakened with the blade, and it would not rest. The explorer did not see them yet. Eyes watching him from beyond the ruins. Silent shapes in the dark. They too knew the sword had been found, and soon they would come for it. The night no longer belonged to him. The war he did not understand had already begun. The warning. The campfire burned low, sparks rising into the night. The explorer sat close, staring at the sword wrapped in cloth beside him. No matter how tight he bound it, the glow pressed through, faint but alive. It was not a normal glow. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Every flicker reminded him of the words carved on its blade. Humanity shall never rest. Its war is eternal. He tried to eat, but the food tasted like ash. He tried to sleep, but his eyes refused to close. And when they finally did, the dreams came. Dreams that were not dreams, but visions. He saw armies marching under strange skies. He saw fire raining down on worlds he did not know. He heard 1,000 voices screaming his name, though he had never met them. The sword spoke without sound. Its whispers filled his skull, carried on waves of dread. "You are chosen," the voices said. "Do not run. Do not resist. Your kind has no choice." He woke, gasping, his skin cold, the fire dead, and the sword lying beside him, unwrapped, glowing as if it had freed itself. The explorer pushed it away, but the blade only slid closer, humming with strange hunger. He stood, ready to throw it into the dark. Yet his hands froze. The whispers turned sharper, not begging, but commanding. "If you break me, if you bury me, they will come, and you will die first." His breath shook. He turned his head, and for the first time, he noticed the silence. The forest around his camp was too quiet. No crickets, no wind, not even the rustle of leaves. It was as if the world held its breath, listening. He gripped the sword again, not by choice, but because his body moved before his mind. The warmth filled his arms, sinking into his bones. And then more visions. He saw a wall of stone crumbling under alien claws. He saw human soldiers in ancient armor falling one by one, and above them, shadows taller than towers. Their eyes burned like red suns. And still, the humans fought, carrying the same blade he now held, each bearer screaming the same words before the end. "Humanity shall never rest. Its war is eternal." The explorer staggered back. The visions ended, but the fear remained. He understood now. The sword was no relic, no treasure. It was a curse, a chain passed from one human to another, across centuries, across galaxies. It had never rested, never stopped choosing, and now it had chosen him. The fire sparked again, though he had not touched it. Flames danced tall, casting long shadows. And within those shadows, shapes moved. Tall, thin figures flickered at the edge of sight. They did not step close, they only watched. The sword hummed louder, almost eager. "They know," the voices whispered. "They have found you." Fear crushed his chest. He grabbed his pack, tied the sword tighter, and ran. Through the forest, through the dark, not daring to look back. The shadows followed, silent but unbroken. No sound of steps, no rustle of leaves, yet always behind him. He reached the edge of a river, cold mist rising from the water. The moon lit its surface silver. For a moment, he thought of throwing the blade into the current, letting it sink where no one would find it. But then the inscription flared bright under the cloth, burning through the fabric, burning into his eyes. "Humanity shall never rest. Its war is eternal." The words echoed across the river, like thunder. The water rippled, the mist shook, and for a heartbeat, he saw faces in the current. Countless human faces, all staring at him. Some crying, some broken, some filled with rage. All whispering the same word, fight. His knees buckled, his strength fading. The blade's glow dimmed, but the warning remained. He knew now that his choice was an illusion. The sword was bound to him, and through him, to all mankind. If he fled, they would follow. If he hid, they would burn the world to find him. And if he fought, he would become what the others had been before him. Another nameless soldier in humanity's eternal war. The forest behind him shifted. Branches snapped though no hand touched them. The shadows stepped closer. Red eyes flickered through the mist. And the blade pulsed one last time. "Take me," the voices hissed, "or you will not see the morning." The explorer raised the sword. Its glow painted the night in pale fire. The shadows halted, hissing, and for the first time, he felt the blade's true weight, not in his hand, but in his soul. A burden too heavy for one man. A war too vast for one life. Yet it had chosen, and he could not turn away. The night returned to silence. The shadows faded, waiting for another time, another strike. But the warning was clear. The war had not ended. It had only been waiting for him. The history hidden. The city was far behind him, but the sword's presence never left. Days passed, and yet the whisper in his mind stayed sharp. Every night, it reminded him of the words, "Humanity shall never rest. Its war is eternal." He knew now it was no ordinary relic. It carried history too dangerous for the world to ignore. He found himself standing before the great archive, a place where time itself seemed frozen. Walls stretched high, covered with carvings and shelves. Ancient scrolls, brittle books, and fragments of stone lay stacked within. The air smelled of dust and secrets. Only scholars came here, yet even they avoided the deepest chambers. He lit a torch and moved through the hall. The sound of his footsteps echoed like a drum. The sword, though wrapped in cloth, pulsed faintly in his hand. It guided him, pulling him deeper into the forgotten sections. Past warnings etched into the walls, past doors locked with rusted chains, until he reached a chamber untouched for centuries. He placed the torch into a stand. The flame revealed murals across the walls. Humans painted in lines of war, battling creatures not of this earth. Some bore wings like shadows, others crawled with too many limbs, and always, at the center of the battle, was a sword glowing like fire. The same blade he now carried. His breath caught. The mural was not legend, it was history. The sword had been here before, passed from hand to hand. Every bearer erased from memory. Every war hidden from mankind's story. But the truth remained carved in stone. Humanity had fought not one war, but many. Wars across the stars. Wars never told. He reached for a broken tablet at the base of the mural. The writing was fractured, yet some lines still spoke clear. The eternal blade chooses, never asks, never forgives. One bearer stands until he falls, then another shall rise. When the blade is lifted, the enemy will return. His chest grew heavy. He realized that by drawing the sword from the ruins, he had done more than wake it. He had invited the enemy back. The shadows he saw at the river were only the beginning. The true war had not yet arrived. From deeper within the chamber came a sound, a scrape of stone, a shift of air. He froze, gripping the sword tighter. But it was not an enemy. An old man stepped into the torchlight, his robes torn, his beard white, his eyes sharp like blades. "You should not have taken it," the man said, voice rough with age. "That sword has destroyed every life it touched." The explorer raised the blade, unsure whether to defend or attack. But the old man only shook his head. "I'm the last keeper of the archive," he said. "I know what you hold, and I know what it will cost you." The explorer's throat dried. "Tell me," he whispered. "What is it? What does it want?" The old man's gaze hardened. "It wants blood," he said. "It wants war because that is all it has ever known." He stepped closer, pointing at the mural. "Every name you do not know, every soldier forgotten, they bore that sword. And now it has chosen you." The explorer felt the weight of the blade deepen. The whispers grew louder, pressing against his thoughts. "You cannot refuse," the old man said, his voice almost pitying. "You can try to bury it, you can try to hide, but it will find its way back to you. Because humanity's enemy does not rest, and neither does the sword." The torch flickered, and for a moment, the mural seemed alive. The painted warriors screamed silently, their blades clashing against unseen foes. The explorer's stomach turned. He wanted to deny it, to claim this was madness. But in his heart, he knew it was truth. He had seen the shadows, he had felt their hunger, and he had heard the warning. The old man turned, shuffling back toward the darkness. "Leave this place," he said without looking back. "The sword will show you more than I can, and none of it will bring you peace." And then he was gone, swallowed by the shadows of the archive. The explorer stood alone, the blade warm in his hand. He stared once more at the mural. The sword painted there glowed with the same fire as the weapon he carried. It was not legend, not prophecy. It was a chain of war that had stretched across centuries. And now he was bound to it. He extinguished the torch and left the chamber. But as the darkness closed in, the whisper returned. Softer, colder, yet sharper than before. Soon, it said, they will come, and you will fight, as all before you have fought. The explorer walked out into the night. And for the first time, he realized the truth. The sword had not only given him visions, it had given him a promise. And promises like this could not be broken. The enemy revealed. The night was quiet when he left the archive, but his heart was not. The old man's words echoed in his mind. Every name you do not know, every soldier forgotten, they bore that sword. And now it has chosen you. The city lights were far away, hidden beyond mountains. Here, the land was empty, silent, and still. Yet even in silence, he felt the weight of unseen eyes. The sword pulsed faintly beneath its cloth wrapping. Every beat of light like a warning. They are near. He walked faster, his breath sharp. The road bent through a canyon where the moonlight barely reached. Shadows clung to the rocks like oil. His lantern cast small light, but the dark pressed harder. Then he heard it low, steady wrong. Not footsteps, not wind, but a sound like claws scraping on stone. He froze. The sound came again, closer. Slow, patient, hunting. He pulled the sword free without thought. The glow burst out, chasing the shadows away. And then he saw them. Figures stepped into the light, tall and thin. Their bodies twisted, their limbs longer than men's. Eyes burned red, sharp like blades in the dark. They wore no armor, but their skin shimmered like metal. One hissed, its mouth wide with teeth too many for a human jaw. The sound cut through the canyon like a blade. The explorer's grip tightened. Fear locked his chest. But the sword pulsed again, heat spreading through his arm. And without command, it raised itself. The creatures hissed louder, stepping back but not retreating. They had seen this weapon before. They remembered it, feared it, hated it. Then came the vision, sharp as lightning. The explorer staggered, but the sword forced his eyes open. He saw not one canyon, but many. Not one battle, but countless. The same creatures tearing through human lines. The same red eyes burning across different worlds. He saw skies black with their swarms. And in every vision, a human held the same sword. Fighting until the end, the whisper returned, louder now. They are the ancient enemy, the sword said. They hunt your kind across stars, across time. They do not forget, and they will not forgive. The explorer's chest burned with fear and fury. He swung the blade, and the light tore across the canyon. The creatures shrieked, shadows splitting under the fire. One lunged, claw striking, but the blade moved on its own, cutting through the beast like smoke. Its body melted into ash, the air filling with a stench of burnt iron. The others pulled back, hissing, but their eyes stayed fixed on him. They did not leave, they did not run. They were waiting, watching, and in their gaze, he felt a promise. They would return stronger, countless. This was only the beginning. The sword calmed, its glow fading to a soft hum. The explorer dropped to his knees, gasping. Sweat poured down his face. His hands shook, not from the fight, but from what he had seen. Those visions were not warnings. They were memories. The sword carried the wars of every bearer before him. And now those memories were his. He pressed the blade into the ground. The earth smoked where the tip touched. Why me? He whispered, voice breaking. The sword pulsed once, a cold reply. Because you held me. The explorer's eyes burned with exhaustion, but he forced himself to stand. He looked around the canyon. The shadows were gone, but the silence remained, heavy, unnatural. The enemy had revealed itself, and he understood now that they had never truly left. They had been waiting, watching for the sword's next master, waiting for their war to begin again. He wrapped the blade once more, though the glow could not be hidden, and he walked on, faster. The old man's words echoed again. When the blade is lifted, The enemy will return. The explorer clenched his jaw. They had already returned, and the war had already found him. Far above, in the black of the sky, a shadow moved. It was no cloud, no bird. It was something vast, its wings stretching wider than mountains. Its eyes burned faint red, watching. The enemy had revealed more than claws and whispers tonight. They had revealed their hunger, and they would not stop. Not until the blade was theirs. Not until humanity was ashes. The choice. The dawn broke cold and gray. The explorer sat on a ridge, the sword across his knees. Below him, the valley stretched wide, but it brought no peace. He had seen the enemy with his own eyes. He had felt their claws, heard their hiss, smelled their ash. And yet the real battle was not outside. It was inside him. The blade glowed faintly, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. It looked harmless in the morning light, almost beautiful, almost holy. But he knew the truth. It was not a gift, not a treasure. It was a chain, a curse that bound him to a war he never asked for. He thought of throwing it from the ridge, letting it tumble into the rocks below, letting the river take it far away. But when he stood to do it, his arms froze. The sword's warmth spread through his skin. The whisper filled his skull. If you abandon me, your kind will fall. He shook his head, breathing hard. Why me? He shouted at the empty air. I am no soldier, no leader. I am nothing. The whisper answered cold and calm. You touched me. That is enough. The words cut deeper than any blade. The explorer fell to his knees. He remembered the old man's face, filled with pity. He remembered the murals, the forgotten soldiers, each one erased from history, swallowed by the same fate. If he accepted the blade, he too would vanish. His name, his life, his future, all gone. If he refused, the enemy would come anyway, and countless others would die in his place. The choice was no choice at all. He pressed his forehead against the sword's hilt. The leather was rough, but it throbbed with heat. Visions returned, sharper than ever. He saw himself fighting in deserts, on burning cities, on ships drifting through the void of space. Each vision ended the same: blood, fire, silence. And always the sword in his hand. Tears burned his eyes. I don't want this, he whispered. The sword pulsed again. Want has nothing to do with it. The wind rose, carrying dust across the ridge. From the valley below came a low rumble. He looked up and saw movement in the distance. Dark shapes shifting, crawling, too many to count. The enemy was gathering already. Drawn by the blade, hungry for it. They would not stop. He had no more time to run. His chest tightened with fear, but also with something else. A fire, small but growing. The visions returned, not of death this time, but of defiance. Humans standing together, blades raised, refusing to kneel. Their faces unknown, their names forgotten. But their fight burned like a torch in the dark. He realized then the sword was more than a curse. It was also a memory of every battle, every sacrifice. A weapon forged not just from metal, but from the will of his kind. The whisper softened, almost gentle. Take me, and you will suffer. But take me, and humanity will endure. The explorer stood, the sun rising at his back. The enemy shadows stretched across the valley. He tightened his grip. For the first time, it was not the sword moving his hand. It was his choice, his will. I will not break, he said, voice steady. The blade flared bright, brighter than the sun. The valley shook with the force of its light. The enemy shadows hissed and shrieked, retreating into cracks of stone. But he knew they would return. They always returned. He sheathed the sword across his back, the weight heavy, but no longer unbearable. It was not freedom. It was not peace. But it was purpose. The choice was made. He would fight, as all before him had fought, as all after him would fight. The ridge stood silent once more. Only the wind carried his words into the endless sky. Humanity shall never rest. Its war is eternal. The first battle. The night returned heavy and silent. The explorer walked through the valley, the sword strapped to his back. Every step echoed louder than it should. The air itself seemed to wait, thick with hidden eyes. He reached the ruins of an old watchtower, broken and leaning. There he stopped, building a small fire. He knew he should move, keep running, but some force told him to stay. The sword hummed against his spine, restless, impatient. It was not only waiting for him, it was waiting for them. The first sound came like a whisper, rocks tumbling far off. Then another, closer, sharper. The fire flickered though no wind touched it. The explorer's hand moved to the hilt. The glow burst free before he even drew the blade. And the valley answered with a scream. From the shadows they poured. Dozens at first, then more. Shapes twisting, crawling, leaping. Eyes like burning coals in the dark. Their bodies shimmered with shifting armor. Neither flesh nor metal, but something between. The explorer froze, fear crushing his chest. The sword pulsed harder. Stand, it whispered. He gritted his teeth, pulled the blade free. Light tore across the ruins. The creatures shrieked, some falling back. But the rest charged. The first lunged fast, claws reaching. The sword moved before he could think. Its edge cut clean, the creature dissolving to ash. Heat spread through his arms, through his chest. The sword guiding, the sword fighting. He was no warrior, yet his body moved like one. Every swing precise, every strike burning. The swarm pressed harder, claws clashing against stone, teeth snapping close. The explorer stumbled, barely keeping balance. But the blade never faltered. It curved, spun, cut through three at once. Light burst each time, shadows scattering. Still more came. They dropped from cliffs, crawled from cracks. The air filled with their screams. The fire died. The stars vanished. Only the sword's glow lit the battlefield. And in that glow, the explorer saw more than the fight. He saw memories, soldiers in armor, men and women from forgotten ages, each one holding the blade, each one surrounded, just as he was now. Their mouths moved though no sound came. But he knew the word they spoke, fight. A claw tore across his shoulder, pain bursting hot. He fell to one knee. The swarm closed in, red eyes burning. The sword pulsed, desperate. Rise, it hissed. He forced himself up, blood running. And when he swung again, the blade roared. Flames erupted from its edge. The strike cut wide, a wave of fire ripping through the swarm. Creatures shrieked, their bodies shattering into ash and smoke. The ground trembled, the ruins cracked. The explorer gasped, chest heaving. But the swarm broke, retreating into the night. Dozens of eyes fading into the dark. Yet none truly gone, only waiting. Silence returned. The valley reeked of burnt iron. Ash drifted like black snow. The sword dimmed, humming low. The explorer dropped to his knees, trembling. His wound burned, his strength fading. But his heart pounded with fire. For the first time, he had fought and survived. He looked at the blade. It no longer felt like a stranger. It felt like an extension of him. But that truth brought no comfort. If this was only the first battle, what would the war demand of him next? The wind rose, carrying whispers across the ruins. He looked to the cliffs, and his blood froze. Far above, a figure stood, taller than the rest, broader. Its eyes burned brighter, its claws sharper. It did not charge, it did not hide. It only watched. And in its stare, the explorer felt a promise. The battles would not end. This was only the beginning. The sword pulsed once more. Bearer, it whispered, your war has begun. The explorer gripped the hilt tighter. Exhausted, bleeding, trembling. But he stood tall under the broken tower. Because he knew the truth now. The choice was behind him. The battle was here. And the enemy would never stop. He whispered into the night, his voice steady. Then neither will I. The eternal war begins. The ruins lay quiet, covered in ash. The fire was gone, the stars hidden. Only the glow of the sword remained, faint and steady. The explorer stood alone, blood on his shoulder, dust on his face. His breath came heavy, his body trembled. But his eyes stayed sharp, fixed on the cliffs above. The figure was still there, taller than the rest, broad as a tower. Its eyes burned brighter like red suns. It did not move, it did not speak. It only watched, and in its silence, the explorer felt the truth. The enemy had generals, not just swarms, leaders, commanders, minds as sharp as blades. And they had seen him. They would never forget him. The sword pulsed once, not gentle, not warm, but like a drumbeat of war. The words carved into its blade burned fresh. Humanity shall never rest. Its war is eternal. The explorer tightened his grip. The enemy on the cliffs turned slowly and vanished into shadow. The valley sank into silence once more. But he knew it was not over. It was only waiting. They would gather, they would return. And this time, not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands. He sheathed the sword across his back. The weight pulled hard. He staggered but refused to fall. The visions returned, sharper than ever. He saw cities burning under alien skies. He saw soldiers in armor marching across endless deserts. He saw ships torn apart in the void of space. And always the same enemy waiting, claws sharp, eyes burning, hunting humanity, hunting him. The whisper filled his head. You are not the first. You will not be the last. But you are chosen now. He closed his eyes. For a moment, he wished he could return to the life before the ruins. A life of silence, of small discoveries, of peace. But that man no longer existed. The sword had erased him. In his place stood the bearer, the next soldier in a chain without end. Dawn broke, pale and cold. Light spilled across the valley. The ash shimmered, rising like smoke. The explorer walked from the ruins, each step heavy. He no longer asked why. He no longer asked how. The war had chosen him, and now he walked toward it. As he crossed the ridge, he saw movement on the horizon, shapes crawling like a tide. The enemy spreading, growing, farther than his eyes could see. And higher still, dark wings cut across the morning sky. Their shadows stretched wide. The war was no longer hidden. It had begun again. The sword hummed. Its glow spread brighter. The inscription shifted, letters burning into new words. Bearer, your war has no end. His heart pounded, his hand tightened. He whispered back, steady and calm. Then let it begin. The horizon trembled with movement. The air filled with a distant roar. The eternal war was no longer a story carved on stone, no longer whispers in a dream. It was here now, alive, and humanity's survival rested on the blade in his hand, and the will in his heart. The explorer took one last look at the rising tide of shadows. He knew he could not win alone, but he also knew he was not truly alone. Every bearer before him still lived in the blade. Every fight, every sacrifice, every last stand burned within it. Their strength was his strength. Their fire was his fire. He raised the sword high. The glow burst across the sky. The shadows halted, their roar breaking into silence. The first battle had ended, but the eternal war had begun. And so the story closed not with peace, not with victory, but with the promise of endless struggle. The bearer stood, small against the tide, but unbroken, because even against forever, humanity would fight,